Let's move on to a team that has aspirations to eventually make the playoff here in the very near future, about the Oklahoma Sooners. They are going to be moving to the SEC, potentially here a little bit sooner, no pun intended. The question that gets begged a lot of the time with them and with Texas, we'll talk about Texas, I would imagine, in the near future. But for Oklahoma, are they ready for the SEC? I mean, they went 6-7 this year. They had a first-year head coach who, not just his first year at Oklahoma as the head coach, his first time ever being a head coach. Are they ready for what's going to happen in the SEC? Got to break that question down just a little bit. I think what people are asking when they say that is Oklahoma going to have the grit? Are they going to be tough enough? Are they going to be physical enough to play with those big bad boys down in Baton Rouge and with Tuscaloosa and Athens and Oxford? Like, are they going to be able to withstand the physicality? So here's the answer. If they were to go to the SEC today, it's not novel analysis. They went 6-7 this past year in 2022 in the Big 12 Conference. I don't think they're ready for the SEC this year in terms of competing for conference titles. Now, to be fair, there's a lot of teams in the SEC that aren't competing for the conference title, so take that as you will. Now, in the future, we got to look at direction. We got to look at trajectory. We got to look at process. And I think they're really building this thing with an eye towards the future, and I think they're doing it effectively. Going back to what I just said, the question is, well, are they going to be tough enough? Will they have it in the trenches? Listen, if they don't have it in the trenches, it won't be for a lack of effort. Because Brent Venables has gone out and put together a Cruton class for the program. They are a top 10 class at the time of us being live right now. And of their 25 commits from the high school level, 13 of those are what I like to call trench players. And a trench player doesn't have to be a down lineman. It could be a linebacker. It could be a tight end. Anybody that's about to just stick their face mask in your face mask and try and move you against your will, like they're going to mix it up and try and establish the line of scrimmage, I consider that a trench player. So 13 of the 25 are trench players. And that class ranking should tell you some pretty good trench players. Also, in terms of looking to the future, you got to look at the competition, right? Because it doesn't matter if I have the number 10 ranked class, which Oklahoma's higher than that right now, but stick with me here theoretically. If the other 9 teams ahead of me, I got to play on the schedule. If I'm getting the 10th best talent in my surrounding area, but I'm 10 in the country, like, it doesn't really matter. So here's who they're ahead of right now. There's more teams, but this is the notable ones. They're ahead of LSU, they're ahead of Florida, ahead of Tennessee, and ahead of Texas A&M. It's a very big deal. I think personnel-wise, they are just continuing to position themselves to be competitive. Now, I'll make this also very clear. They have to develop that. It's not good enough to just get a 4-star, 5-star into your program. You have to then develop that and get the most out of that. And also, just to be frank, you have to re-recruit that individual every single year. Here's another thing, outside of the trench players. Bill Polian said this at the Personnel Symposium this past year in Tennessee, or in Nashville. I guess Nashville's in Tennessee, but we were there is what I'm trying to tell you. And it was so simple, but I think so true. And he was talking about what you need at different positions to be successful. Hey, look for this sort of build, look for this kind of skill set at wide receiver, and so on and so forth for, linebacker and what have you. But then he got to the quarterback position and just said, if you have the quarterback position right, you solve 60% of your problems. Oklahoma feels like they got the quarterback position right. Jackson Arnold, one of the best in the country, out of Denton Guyer, 5-star kid. He is a guy that I am very, very excited to see. We like him a lot here. Does Charles Power, director of scouting for On 3, turned on the tape the other day, or turned on the live game, rather, in the Under Armour All-American game. He was dealing, man. Dude can spin the rock, so keep an eye on that. But you're building personnel-wise, having the quarterback right on paper, and then having the trenches right on paper. So things are all headed the right direction. It's not equating to wins just yet, but things are headed the right direction in terms of what you've done so far this point in the process. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have not yet subscribed to the program and joined us here, we would love to have you on the roster. We'd love to have you a part of what we're building here. I won't push it too much, but I will just say that. We do this 12 months out of the year, and we cover it how college football operates. We don't take a break. Neither does the sport. So thank you in advance for that. Also, follow me on Twitter and on Instagram, at JD Piquel. We can have a lot of interaction there. Tell me more of what you want to see on this program. It's your show. People's show, for the people, by the people, everything you know and love about this beautiful sport. All right? The question so often for a program that is in a transition period, like Oklahoma is, do you have the right leadership? Do you have the right guy leading the program and taking this thing where you want it to go? I think they do. I wholeheartedly believe they do. You went 6-7, like I said, so you probably have a split room in Norman in terms of what you believe about Brent Venables right now. I'll just say this. He's made up of the right things. Like, take away all the feelings you have about, what you've heard and what you thought about him prior. Just look at the facts. Great recruiter. He understands it's a talent acquisition game. They have a number 6 class right now. They are going to get top talent to Norman. Now, they have to develop it. It's not good enough to just get the ingredients. If I just have flour and pepperonis, I don't have pizza, right? It's got flour and pepperonis. Bad deal. I think they're going to develop that well, but at the end of the day, you have the ingredients, and that's half the battle, and they're going to continue to have the ingredients in Norman. Also, the scheme. You got to have the X's and O's too, y'all. It's just the reality. You know it and I know it. We've watched too many different programs stumble and fall with great talent. I don't mean to bang on Texas A&M right here, but let's just be real. They had a lot of talent, a lot of ability last year. Nobody really feels like they maximized it. I would echo that sentiment for the people in College Station. I think they feel that way. And thus they went and hired Bobby Petrino. So the scheme of what they have, it works, but I will say this, it is very much so personnel driven. So some of the things you saw last year that you weren't thrilled about, some of the things that you're frustrated about last year, some of that could be, okay, we're getting adjusted to the scheme. We're still figuring it out, how to execute perfectly and how to execute consistently. But I think a lot of that, too, is just getting the right guys because they ask a lot of that defensive line. Think back to those Clemson teams that he coached on the defensive side. Freakish defensive linemen. Great length, great speed, great size. That's what they're going to recruit, especially in the trenches there. P.J. Adebaware is an absolute dog. He lit up the UA All-American game, too. So they're going to get the right guys. I'm just saying the scheme works better than I think what you saw it look like this past year. It's not to knock who they have on the roster. Just keep an eye on especially the edge position and who they're getting in the transfer portal. Deshaun McCullough from Indiana. It's an enormous kid. Same build as P.J. Adebaware. A guy who can run, a guy who can play the edges. So they're going to get there. They're going to get there, but I really do believe in the scheme. It's a proven scheme with different personnel at Clemson. I'll just leave it at that. He also has some skins on the wall. It's not like he's never touched the SEC. It's not like he's never played against an SEC program. Actually, guess what? He's got 2 wins against the greatest coach of all time. Now, those aren't Brent Venables' head coach football team. He's the defensive coordinator, but I'm just telling you, he's not going to be overwhelmed with what the SEC presents. In fact, if you listen to his press conferences and different things that Brent Venables has said since he got to Norman, he references the SEC a fair amount. He understands, hey, physicality, that's maybe kicked up a notch just by nature of who's in that conference, by nature of how they've built their teams over time. That's going to be something that requires a little bit more from us. So that's the reality there. But 2023 for this team is huge. 2023, I think, in terms of what they'll look like when they get to the SEC, not to say that it'll be the end-all, be-all on Brent Venables, but what it will be like in terms of a bridge year getting to the SEC, it's enormous. Because I think this is the year where you had your one acclimation year. If you're somebody watching, whether you're a recruit, whether you're a fan, you have some patience for the first year. Now, we want to see proof of concept. And that is especially true for recruits. Now I want to see that you can be competitive after hitting the portal, after having an offseason, after getting, sort of your feet wet as a head coach. Now folks are going to want to see some ROI. And this whole thing is the equivalent of the snowball effect. Because if you have proof of concept, you get some more wins, right? What does that do? Hey, I'm a recruit. I might want to go play at Oklahoma. It's a big brand. I see them doing well. I see guys at my position getting drafted. Okay. I believe in that. More talent. What does more talent equate to? Better roster. Better roster You have to develop that. Like I said, you have to develop it. You have to build it the right way and have depth there. Put a better roster. We're back to the top of the wheel now. More wins, more opportunities to win, rather. Doesn't totally equate to just a national championship after a couple cycles, but I'm just saying that is what I think is at stake here. Because if they have, let's say, another year they win 6 games, you kind of say, is that who Oklahoma is? Is that what I'm getting into? And it starts to, I don't know if it slips, but I think it stays stagnant. And the reality is you can't be stagnant in terms of your roster and as your program heading into the SEC. So for this year, if they could be somewhere in the 9-win range, I think that could really kickstart things. Make a New Year's Six Bowl, heck, win a New Year's Six Bowl. That would be very, very impactful for this program in terms of momentum going forward. So Brent Venables in Oklahoma, are they ready for the SEC today? They went 6-7 last year. I think it's a hard argument. But the great news is they got time. They're still building. They're not going to the SEC today. They're going to the SEC in what sounds like a year or 2 years, give or take. They're building it the right way. I believe in Brent Venables. I believe in what he's doing. I think the Sooners will be ready when that day comes for them to head to the Southeastern Conference. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.